Good evening, it's midnight, I'm Jan, and this is my SketchDoodleDraw of this week. In this series I'd like to, right now, even though it's sketch, doodles, and drawings, it can be anything. I'm open to suggestions, but I'd like to take a drawing from pencils to inks into Photoshop, and in Photoshop ink it again to familiarize myself with the inking tool there, and then color it, take it all the way to the finish line, to have a nice finished piece that I can show it to you later on. So I took a picture of myself, and off we went. I drew it. For every stage that you see, whether it's the pencils, the inks, or Photoshop inks, or the colors, I took about half an hour. That was my time limit for every stage of this little exercise. Every part of the time lapse is about 2 minutes roughly. We end up with about 7 minutes, as you probably have already seen. So this is me inking. What I like to do nowadays is I like this workflow of starting with a really thick line, adding some detail in, and then once I'm done with detail, go over it again one more time with the thick marker. For this drawing in particular, I tried to keep it simple because if you've been watching any of my videos regarding to my comic book, I'm making my own comic book. It's called Phosphor, and there's a 100-day challenge I took on, and there's a video series of the same name, which I will link to in this or that corner. There's something popping up right now, detailing how I came about the story and how I go about making that one. But at the moment, I'm at day 93 or 94, and in the last couple of videos, I've been going crazy with inks. Really, I sketch in inks. I probably shouldn't be doing that, but I've just been having fun, and it's really because I want to, as you're about to see, I really want to get really used to and friendly with the brush tools I'm now using in Photoshop. In the box on the bottom right, you can see how many tools I narrowed it down to from many more. These are the only ones I use right now for inking. I'm not adverse to fixing up my own drawings, getting the lasso tool out, moving stuff around a little bit. I think it's perfectly fine. And these are my digital inks. I think they're coming out all right, a bit on the thick side perhaps. This is still a thing I have to kind of figure out, like just how thin I can go, because this drawing I only realized at the very end was actually in 72 dpi, which might not mean a lot to you, but the higher the dpi, the finer the detail. So that kind of explains why it's so thick with the line, which is a good thing. I'm not complaining about this, but for my comic book and for future drawings in this series, I find it a little tricky to know just how much I can zoom in and doodle without that detail being lost. So the balance here was struck. It was cool. So as we're about to finish this stage up, as I said before, I'm open to suggestions. I'm going to start keeping a list if there's lots of suggestions. It's first come, first serve, guys. Hit me up. I'm willing to, as long as you understand that I'm not going to go full illustration. I'm going to keep it as an exercise and keep it within these time limits as I set out for this one, so it's not too crazy. In the meantime, I have lots of things I want to draw myself. I'll continue practicing these expressions and using myself if need be. And a little backdrop. So for the coloring stage, I had a white layer underneath the inks after I got rid of the original paper, and I just started selecting the different parts. Like this is something they do coloring in comic books, and I think they call it flattening. So I just took the shirt, as you will see here, gave it one color, took the skin, the hand, the face, gave it one color, took the background and gave it one color, and then with the magic wand tool you can select that color and it makes a perfect selection straight away. I select the color again, drop it down to get a darker one, and just start adding some shadows, and then do the same for some highlights. There's this really cool effect I've noticed on a lot of comic book art where the inks themselves seem to have a color as well. And so a little bit later, what you'll see, you might miss it, but what I actually do is I drop a layer on top of this one, drop a gradient, and change the mode of lighting for the layer so it blends in nicely with those inks and gives the blacks a nice little color. Here we go. And changing the mode and dropping the opacity so it's not too crazy. I dropped a layer on top of it for highlights, shadows, and other effects. And again, I tried to, this is where I started creeping close to the half-hour mark. So I ultimately just stopped. And then in the end, I couldn't resist and just give it a little bit of a soft touch here and there. But overall, I'm quite pleased with how this one came out. It's my first comic book coloring from start to finish like this. Some time ago I learned how to paint in Photoshop, and so I'm much more familiar with actual painting, and I try to paint on as few layers as possible to make it more, well, it just feels better that way. So I hope you liked that video. Press like, hit subscribe if you want to see more. Hit me up in the comments if you have any suggestions, and I'll be seeing you guys next week. So have a good evening. I'm gonna get some honey for this.